Hi YouTubers, I'm back for another What Would Have Happened if This Were in Real Life RhinoTMRTGamePlay series YouTube video. And I'm finally back in this area, well, after a long time. Now, I figured that I would come back for this area, and yes, of course, I already have a topic for this, and yeah, I guess it kind of does make a lot of sense for me to do this one, because, I've been trying and trying over and over again. Now, keep in mind that the Vlad the Vampire, the Count Vlad the Vampire Hotel Transylvania prequel. After doing the first one and the fourth one for the trailer reaction YouTube videos for those, I figured that I would, do this one because, it kind of felt very great and all, and yeah, I guess it kind of does feel a lot great when coming down to all of that, and I guess you could say that it was very great, and I guess it will kind of already be worth it by the time, I do another one of these, so yeah, and yes, of course, this is the Count Vlad the Vampire Hotel Transylvania prequel movie idea, which of course is taking place long before the first movie, and seeing how we already have a lot of prequel material for Count Dracula and the Hotel Transylvania movies, I figured I would do the same thing. I figured that I would do the same thing for Count Vlad, so you can sit back and relax and enjoy. You can sit back and relax and enjoy this. And anyways, this is the what would have happened if the Count Vlad the Vampire Hotel Transylvania prequel movie were in real life. Now we cut open to the beginning where we see Uncle like Vampire who basically receives a letter from an owl therefore giving a Harry Potter reference in there, where Count Vlad's parents died, where Count Vlad's parents and grandparents died by humans. Now, this is not canon. Now, technically, this isn't canon with the real life version, but hey, it's a good start to a good story. So Vlad's uncle eventually sees the young Vlad, and it turns out he likes all the the bad stuff. He kind of likes the stuff that he enjoys as a young person for a bit. So then as a much younger person, he of course learns how to hate humans and drink blood. Just like in like the first movie. So yeah, I think this is a perfect start for a Hotel Transylvania prequel, because it would give us a new character, and it would give us a new character design, it would give us a new character arc, prequel character arc, and it would also show us what happens long before the first Hotel Transylvania 1. Now, keep in mind, I also did the Ohana family, Lilo and Stitch prequel movie idea, which was actually one of the best ones I created. So now coming back to this one, I'm doing really good with it. So Count Vlad's uncle, who of course goes by the name of Movad. So Count Vlad's Uncle Movad, well, in this one, actually tells his much younger self that no human would ever stand a chance against him. And then of course we cut to years later, where we see a much more adult-like version of Count Vlad, and here I think it's actually a very good intro / prologue to this one. And here I think it's an actually perfectly good one to an animated movie series that will definitely go very well. So here we also meet Vlad's friends. One of them is a mummy, one of them is a ghost, and the other is a skeleton, and the other is a big spider. think of the the big Strider friend for Count Vlad, sort of like the think of it sort of as like Aragog, but think of him sort of think of the the Spider friend to Count Vlad more like the Aragog to his Hagrid, which I guess kind of does feel a lot great and so great at all. So yeah. So Count Vlad and his friends are all like, let's go, let's go, do stuff, do what we do best. And it just so happens that Count Vlad sees a vampire girlfriend who actually goes by the name, who of course of New Us, NEWUS, which is kind of the the funny joke and all, which you kind of get it. You get the funny joke, and I wanted it to stay like this forever. And besides, Hotel Transylvania 4 already just came out like 5 days ago, so this is like the perfect idea and topic for this YouTube video. So Count Blood eventually meets up with Countess Newus, and it turns out Countess Newus is a lot like like a long black haired, some vampire girl, some kind vampire woman of some kind, like somewhere around like this area and all. And yeah, I guess it kind of does make a lot of sense for me to do this one, because this is kind of the idea. But then it turns out that she gets captured by humans, so Count Vlad and all of his friends would have to eventually go rescue Countess Newus, and eventually both Vlad and Newus would get married, and then eventually probably have one kid. Or maybe even more. Now, technically, they were thinking about having more kids, but then they come across the line where they say that if they were to get married, but then they come across the line that but then Vlad realizes that senses that Newus doesn't want so many kids, and just wants like one kid, just wants one kid. So, and you kind of know where I'm getting with all this. So Vlad would easily fly through all the area, fly through the skies, while all of his friends would be walking and running towards the humans. And then it turns out these humans, of course, take Countess Newis into a secret underground place. And then of course they are eventually, Count Vlad and his friends, they're all like flying in like one of them is like flying. The Count Vlad is like flying in midair, while the others are just going through running through there and running through to get to them. And then they have to go past, and then there's this big fight and battle scene between the the monsters and the humans in this one, which is agreeably the best one of all time. So yeah, so Count Vlad would eventually go in there. Count Vlad's friends would eventually go in there, but then they realized that it would be too late, and that despite Countess Newus being free of her chains, Count Vlad watches as both his supposed girlfriend and has a supposed vampire girlfriend, and his friends are gone forever. Which I guess this is kind of how it is now. Count Vlad, who is all alone and all, has no wife. Literally, will have no wife, and all his friends immediately just died. But then it turns out that he mysteriously gives birth to someone else. He gives birth to the child, and then of course the Countess Newus actually comes back and says to Count Vlad, here is the baby I promised we would have. I may not have lived on, but this is the baby. We will call him Count Dracula. He will become the best vampire in the world. And then of course Count Vlad, and then of course Countess Newis leaves her vampire spirit and then goes and then flies all the way up to the air, never to be seen. So flies all the way up to this air and sky. Now Count Vlad eventually takes care of Count Dracula, and then we get a montage of his childhood and all of his days, and then of course Count Dracula actually finds his own girlfriend called Countess Marfa, but then Count Vlad actually warns him about him suffering the same thing as he did, because he did not want the same thing to happen to him. So because Count Vlad doesn't want the same thing, because Vlad doesn't want the same thing happening to Dracula, where he loses his wife Marfa, and then he has to grow up with his own kid, and then he has to grow up with his own one kid and go through the same thing that Count Vlad did back in his days. So yeah, and then Count Dracula and Countess Marfa, and along with Count Dracula's friends, who of course are also still in this movie, obviously, are all like, yeah, I guess you kind of are a great monster. So he kind of is. So they kind of thank him for being that, and yeah, I guess this is how it's gonna go down, because in this point of view, I think this is the perfect way for a prequel to start for this to start off, and it's actually a very good one. And then of course Count Dracula and Countess Marfa eventually share a kiss together, and then everything seems perfectly well. And then of course they plan out their own baby, which of course they're planning to name it out, called Mavis, which is leading up to the first Hotel Transylvania movie. Now keep in mind this is going to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to say that if this is a little bit of a much darker movie like The Nightmare Before Christmas, then it's probably going to be directed by Tim Burton. Then I'm guessing it probably would be directed by Tim Burton, and it would probably still be PG. It would probably still be PG, just like its predecessors, which I actually think is a perfectly good way for all of this. So yeah. So anyways, now Count Dracula and Countess Mavis, who are now in Countess Marfa, who are now in their adulthood. Now they of course go through different areas. They go through mountains, and they do the same thing that both of them did in the past, and they do the same thing that both Dracula and Mavis did in the Hotel Transylvania 2, that thing in the sky, and where they were flying in the water or something, which I guess kind of does make perfectly good sense, because I figured it would be like this, and then it would be very obvious, because I wanted to make the story be a lot like this. And then of course all leading up to the eventual part and then it all leads up to that very part, and then the montage stops where it all leads up to the part where Dracula tells Marfa to run away, or Dracula tells Marfa to stay behind, and that I will deal with the humans. However, Dracula loses Marfa, and Mavis was still a baby around that time. And then it all ends out on a perfectly good end at a bad ending. However, Dracula says, I will find a way to find a place for all monsters to not be to hide it away from all the humans. And then it ends out on a perfectly good dark note. The end. And that was my take on the what would have happened if the Hotel Transylvania prequel movie, the Count Vlad, the vampire, would have played out. Anyway, it was felt very great and all. So yeah, anyways, that's it for today. Peace out. Bye bye.